All right, everyone, we lead off today talking about, of course, Trump and his legal team basically getting out ahead of it and saying, look, Trump is probably going to get indicted in Georgia as well, which makes it, are we on indictment 4 or indictment 5 with that? I don't know, because a couple of them are dovetailed with one another, like with Jack Smith's cases. You've got, of course, Alvin Bragg. Then you've got Jack Smith and all he's got going on. Several layers of indictment there. And now you've got Georgia. That's probably the final one. What they're doing, and I do expect them to indict him, it'll be a laundry list of different charges. They'll stack them as the other cases have. The idea of the Uniparty and what they're doing is multifold here. It's got several different layers to it. On one level, they just want to humiliate and punish Trump. On another layer, they want to take him off the campaign trail as often as possible because they're friggin' terrified of him. And third and foremost, they're trying to set up an unwinnability sort of situation for the general election. Trump, if they can stop him from being the Republican nominee, they're going to take the advantage of trying to do so because they don't even want him in the general. And really, if you've got a controlled opposition election, there won't be any interference in it, by the way. It'll be a completely fair election. All you have to do is do what they typically have done before 2016 and rig the primaries, which would be their first goal. If they're unsuccessful at that, what they're hoping is that a person facing multiple felony indictments, possibly by then having been convicted, in all honesty, that they can't win the general because it'll alienate independent voting blocks. I don't know whether that logic actually follows through. If anything, I think that independent voters at some point, if you stack too many charges, if you're too brusque about it, I would think that at some point independent voters would wake up and smell the coffee and realize what's going on and say, look, this is obviously a sham at this point. It doesn't make any sense. But you can expect the indictment anyway in Georgia. The first shot across the bow was Alvin Bragg's charges. Again, artificially upgraded misdemeanors that I think will fall through in court. I don't think they really have a case because arbitrarily deciding that legal expenses aren't allowed to be filed as legal expenses, kind of beyond legal purview, I would think. Everything. I'm sure that all of the material there is documented, and what they're hoping with that and the other cases is that a jury inevitably finds Trump guilty of one or two charges that are included because even if you don't have the evidence, the jury will be predisposed to believe the guilt of the individual being sued by the government, being prosecuted, because there's just so many charges. It's purely psychological, and it's unfortunate that people operate this way, but if you get a random sampling of people together, a lot of them will actually go along with it. So they're saying, look, this person's facing 30 different charges. We don't have the time to go over every bit of evidence for every one of them. Let's just find them guilty of a couple of the lesser charges here. Unfortunately, juries don't always do their due diligence. They've got lives to attend to, etc. And if you tell them, hey, you're going to sit here for the next 15 days deliberating, or you can just make this easy, obviously the threshold of evidence hasn't been attained, but you have to deliberate some, and you're predisposed to believe that that person probably is guilty of something. There's also the problem of political bias. The average person who's under prosecution is just an average Joe. So it's literally Joe the mechanic or something. He's got 13 charges against him. If he doesn't have much of a reputation in the community that the jury pool is brought forth from, this is why sometimes you argue for a change of venue. It depends on the crime. It depends on the person. It depends on what the jury pool's demographics would be. You might do that. With Trump, everyone knows who he is. Most people in the United States have a hardened opinion of him. Some of them really like him, some of them really don't. It's impossible for them to even compile a jury, especially in the D.C. proceedings, that won't be politically biased. And so there might be people who want to find him guilty, or for that token, not guilty, simply because of their political leanings. It'd be interesting if one MAGA fan managed to slip under the radar, get onto one of these juries, and hang the jury. And it's not impossible for that to happen, by the way. I expect in the end, regardless of what happens, whether, you probably do get the Georgia indictments, but, it's possible that it falls through. It's just not particularly likely. Whether or not Trump is found guilty of anything, how quickly the proceedings move, regardless of everything else going on. 2024 is going to be the messiest election in U.S. history, and the Uniparty that is doing this out of a fear of Trump, because Orange Man bad, is literally leading the country to the brink of what they claim that you should be worried about, REJ6, which is the overthrowing of democracy. This is a kangaroo court witch hunt. It's politically motivated. It's based on fear. They wouldn't be doing this. They wouldn't throw out 250 years of civic precedent if they weren't afraid. You don't rock the boat that obviously unless you have no other choice. Normally, you would simply sit back and you'd rig the primaries. They've done this in a number of elections. Why do you think over and over again we've had controlled opposition candidates against one another while being told that they're so markedly different? Bush v. Gore, who cares? Bush v. Kerry, who cares? Obama v. McCain, who cares? Obama v. Romney, who cares? Biden versus anyone other than Trump that's currently in the GOP field, it doesn't really matter, who cares? They're all going to govern in the same way. Bravado and sloganeering aside, you can't necessarily vouch for them not immediately swinging back to neolib neocon the second that they get elected. This is typically what they do. This is what, by the way, DeSantis will do. I'm warning his fans right now that if he were nominated, which I doubt that he will be, there was a campaign memo that was leaked not long ago where he openly proclaims he's going to swing back to the center during the general election. So you're being sold a pig in a poke. The pig in a, that's the other part of their strategy. They're trying to get DeSantis in there because he's sub-MAGA light at this point. I would point out I'll be making my exclusive today on the topic of Ron DeSantis because it seems like he's running for the presidency of Israel more than the presidency of the United States. Very, very funny for the meme lords out there who deem Trump to be Zion Dawn, by the way. You can expect indictment, and we're now in untested waters. This makes my job very difficult. I have to pay double attention to everything that's going on and try to read between the lines because nothing right now that's going on is precedented within U.S. history. We have not had a single, let alone 4 or 5, indictment of a former president. That's not happened before. What we're seeing is brand new. It indicates a uniparty that is under stress and is afraid. What does a scared animal do? It acts unpredictably. The only thing predictable about it is that it will lash out, but you're not quite sure how. It's going to be frenetic because it's scared. It's not a coordinated ambush that it's doing. It's more like it's lashing out at you because you're trying to put it in a cage. That's where all the unipartists belong too, in a fucking cage, which is exactly where they're trying to put Trump, although again, the ever-present problem remains the Secret Service detail that has to go with Trump everywhere he goes till the day he croaks. Might try to Epstein him in jail or something like that. At this point, I wouldn't put it past them to just try to kill Trump. Whether or not they're successful, of course, is also a different matter because he's got his private security to rely on as well. That's about all. Peace out.